After the Sultan came the Mughals. The term Mughal to the new ruler was given by the Portuguese as the founder of the Mughal dynasty. Zahiruddin Muhammad Babur was related to Mongols from his mother's side and to the Timurid dynasty from his father's side. By the close of the 15th century, the power of the Timurid was on the decline. By this time, the Uzbeks succeeded in establishing strong footholds in Transoxiana under Shaybani Khan. Around the same time, the Safavids rose into prominence under Shah Ismail in Iran, while further west, the Ottoman Turks dominated the scene. Shaybani Khan overran almost whole of Transoxiana and Khorasan, and finally in 1510, Shah Ismail of Iran defeated Shaybani Khan in the Battle of Chaldiran. In a short while, 1512, the Ottoman Sultan defeated Shah Ismail, thus leaving the stage again to Uzbeks to become the master of the whole Transoxiana. Babur ascended the throne at Fergana, which was a small principality in Transoxiana, in 1494, only at the tender age of 12. However, it was not a smooth succession for Babur. Both the Mongol Khans as well as the Timurid princesses, especially Sultan Ahmad Mirza of Samarkand, an uncle of Babur, had interest in Fergana. Besides, Babur had to face the discontented nobility. Against all odds, Babur struggled to strengthen his foothold in Central Asia and did succeed in taking Samarkand twice, first in 1497, second in 1500. But he could hardly hold that for long. The four Timurid centers of power finally sealed Babur's fate in Central Asia, and he was left with no option but to look towards Kabul, where the conditions were almost favorable. Its ruler, Ulugh Beg Mirza, had already died in 1501, and Babur occupied Kabul in 1504. Thus, it was the Central Asian situation which pressed and convinced after 1512 to Babur to abandon the hopes of creating an empire in Central Asia and look towards India. The rich resources of India and the meager income of Afghanistan, as Abul Fazl, the official chronicler of Akbar's reign, Babur's grandson, comments, might have been another attraction for Babur. The unstable political situation after Sikandar Lodi's death convinced him of political discontentment and disorder of the Lodi Empire, the last of the Lodis. Invitations from Nana Sangha and Daulat Khan Lodi, the governor of Punjab, might have whetted Babur's ambitions. Perhaps Timur's legacy also provided some background for his invasion. He established his rule in India after defeating Ibrahim Lodi in 1526 CE in the Battle of Panipat. The first half of the 15th century witnessed political instability. With the disintegration of the Tughlaq dynasty, both the Sayyids and the Lodi dynasty rulers failed to cope up with the disruptive forces. The nobles resented and rebelled at the earliest opportunity. The political chaos in the northwest frontier provinces had weakened the center. While analyzing the political setup on the eve of Babur invasion, Rushbrook Williams said that there was a confederacy of the Rajput principalities which was already ready to seize the control of Hindustan. It is held that had Babur not intervened, the Rajputs, led by their illustrious leader Rana Sangha in Rajasthan, would have captured power in northern India. It is argued that the political division of the regional state was religious in nature and that the Rajput Confederacy under Rana Sangha, fired by the religious zeal, wanted to establish a Hindu empire. This assumption is based on the famous passage of Baburnama, where Babur says that Hindustan was governed by 5 Musalman rulers. The Lodis at the center, Gujarat, Malwa, Bahmani and Bengal, and the 2 pagans, Rana Sangha of Mewar and Vijayanagar. In fact, Babur himself says that he used religious sentiments to prepare his men for battle against the famous Hindu Rajput warrior Rana Sangha. So by 1529, however, Babur had established himself in North India, but his ultimate death in 1530 left no choice but his son, eldest son Humayun, to be the ruler, who was defeated in 1540 by a new emerging Afghan noble Sher Shah, who not only defeated Humayun, but Humayun had to flee from Hindustan and took shelter in the Safavid court in Iran. And you can see in the map that the Mughal boundaries are in a close proximity to the Safavid Empire. The Afghans continued to rule till 1555. In 1555, Humayun came back only to rule for a few months and died from the staircases of his newly constructed library in Delhi Old Fort. Now, the Babur and Humayun's rule may not have been long, but it provided a lot of to the Indian society and Indian polity. It had made immense contribution. Babur laid the foundation of Mughal Empire in India, and Babur's victory over his opponents in North India was largely because of his artillery. He brought gunpowder, which the Delhi king and the Rajput kings were unaware of, though the Portuguese had already introduced it in the Gujarat, in the western province of India, but it had not reached Delhi and Rajasthan. Babur followed the rule book of Chengiz Khan called Yasai Changezi or Torai Changezi, and more than the religious guidelines to govern the country. He had a secular approach. He introduced planned square gardens called Chahar Bagh, which became one of the landmarks of the Mughal architecture. He did not construct any palace but preferred to live in the tent-like gardens, which were walled and provided a respite from Indian heat and dust, which Babur constantly complained about. Now, this heat and dust could be warded off with the water channels that were running across this garden, as you can see in the photograph of these gardens. These gardens were based on the Quranic notion of Garden of Paradise, where there were good perfumed flowers, where there was no flies, where there was greenery all around and the water all around. So that was the Quranic notion of a Garden of Paradise or Parizad. The main source of Babur's reign is Baburnama, which is an autobiography and written in Chagatai Turkish. This is the first autobiography of any ruler in India. His son Humayun, though did not contribute much as far as the political stability and extension is concerned, but he contributed in other ways. When he came back from Iran, he brought two master painters, Ustad Mir Ali and Ustad Abdul Samad, and thus the foundation of Mughal painting was laid down in India. He constructed a palace fortress in Delhi known as Purana Kila or the Old Fort. During his exile, Afghan ruler Sher Shah Suri contributed immensely by unifying North India and connecting the roads by building Grand Trunk Road, which is even popular in India and known as GT Road, which connected Gujarat to Bengal and Kashmir to Deccan. It started with the survey of lands and imposed standard land revenue measurement and dry system under which the state demand was fixated to 1/3 of the produce. Introduced postal system in India by constructing dark chowkis and by a system of relay race, the fastest horseman. So it was not the Britisher who introduced postal system. This was Sher Shah Suri. He opened 160 sarais or inns in Delhi, where 2 days were free for any traveler. So if any traveler was coming to Delhi and he was living for free for 2 days in Delhi, so 160 into 2, so he was almost living for a year for free in Delhi. He introduced as standard and the purest silver coin known as Rupaya, which is also the current currency of India. This was the time when silver mines of Latin America were explored and India became a dumping ground of the precious metals. The safety of the roads was ensured and the Sound Justice Department was also ensured. The period does not witness any Hindu-Muslim clash. Then came the glorious period of one of the very powerful and famous ruler of Mughal Empire, Akbar, who ruled from 1556 to 1605. After Humayun's death, his only son Akbar became the emperor. Akbar was only 13 years old when he became the emperor, just like his grandfather. Akbar, after overcoming initial problems and consolidating his hold on the throne, he started a policy of extending Mughal territories. Any policy of expansion meant conflict with the various political powers spread in different parts of the country. A few of these political powers were well organized. The Rajputs, though spread throughout the country as autonomous chiefs and kings, had major concentration in Rajputana. The Afghans held political control mainly in Gujarat, Bihar, and Bengal. In Deccan and South India, the major states were Khandesh, Ahmednagar, Bijapur, Golconda, and other southern kingdoms. In the northwest, some tribals held their sway. Kabul and Kandahar, though held by Mughal factions, were opposed to Akbar. Akbar, through a systematic policy, started the task of expanding his empire. It must be noted that the major expansion of Mughal empire took place during the reign of Akbar. During the reign of his successor Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and Aurangzeb, very little was added in terms of territory, and I've already shown you the map of Mughal empire. The main additions in the later period were made during Aurangzeb's reign in South India and Northeast, that is, Assam was now also added. Akbar's policy of conquest and territorial expansion was accompanied by consolidating the new territories into Mughal administrative structure. So the formation of subas was laid down. In 1580, Akbar divided the whole territory under the Mughals into 12 provinces, which were called subas. These were Allahabad, Agra, Awadh, Ajmer, Ahmedabad, Bihar, Bengal, Delhi, Kabul, Lahore, Multan, and Malwa. After the Deccan conquest, 3 new subas were added, making them to 15. These were Berar, Khandesh, and Ahmednagar. These provinces were governed by a definite set of rulers and a body of officers. Now, as far as the military administration was concerned, Akbar gave a unique shape to the military administration. He combined the earlier practices and new measures for organizing army and tried to evolve a centralized military structure. In fact, the cannons were constructed in the karkhanas that Akbar had opened. He gave mansab to both military and civil officers on the basis of their merit or services to the state. Mansab literally means an office or rank, and mansabdar means holder of a rank. Akbar created 66 grades in his mansabdari system, that is from the command of 10, that is Daibashi, to the commander of 10,000, Dai-Hazari. According to Professor Athar Ali, this was based on Chengiz Khan army's decimal system. All mansabdars were paid in cash or in form of jagir. The jagir was a land assignment in lieu of salary. The military administration involved under Akbar underwent many changes during the rule of his successors. After the defeat of the Lodhis, the central power in India, Babur had to face joint rebellions of Afghans and chieftains. Humayun also had to face their hostility, and Akbar's initial contacts with the chieftains were through skirmishes and wars. In many cases, the chieftains joined hands with Afghans and Mughal rebels. In the process of the conquest and consolidation of Mughal power, Akbar got the support and submission of chieftains. There was no normal declared policy, no formal declared policy of Akbar towards them. On the basis of references in the contemporary sources, we get an idea about the relation between the chiefs and the Mughals. These may be summarized as like after the conquest of submission, they were generally left free to administer their territories. They also had authority to collect revenue, impose taxes, levies, and transit duties, etc. In the collection of revenue, the chieftains generally followed local practices rather than the Mughal regulations. These autonomous chieftains were taken into military services of the Mughals. They were given jagirs and mansabs. Ahmad Raza Khan estimates that around 61 chiefs were given mansab during Akbar's reign. The same trend continued during the reigns of successive Mughal emperors. In many cases, these chieftains were not directly absorbed as mansabdars. They were found helping the Mughal army in their operation against enemy territories or suppression of rebellion. They, throughout the Mughal rule, helped in conquering extensive areas, at times even against their own clansmen. Apart from providing military help, they were given important administrative positions like Subadar, governors, Diwan, finance minister, and Bakshi, army head, etc. They were often assigned their own territories as jagirs, called the Watan jagirs, which were hereditary and non-transferable. An interesting characteristic of their relation was that the Mughal emperor retained the right to recognize the chieftain as the ruler in case of disputes within the family. At the same time, those who had accepted the Mughal suzerainty were extended military protection. The chieftains were supposed to pay a regular tribute to the Mughal emperor called peshkash. It is difficult to ascertain the exact nature of the peshkash. This was at times in cash and others in diamond, gold, elephants, and other rarities. Apart from being a source of revenue, the payment of the peshkash was a symbol of submission to the Mughals. A number of matrimonial alliances were also established, which was a common practice even in Central Asian politics. Right? Now, the most important part of the Mughals was the religious policy, since they were the Muslim rulers and the area that they were governed was ruled by another faith, that is the faith of the Hindus. Now, in his personal faith, Akbar appears continued to be a devout Muslim, performed 5 times prayers. Sheikh Farid Bukhari informs us that he even cleaned up mosques with his own hands and informed strictly the laws of Shariat. He had deep respect for the Prophet. When Abu Turab, on his return from Hajj pilgrimage, brought the relic with Prophet's foot impression, Akbar went on foot several miles to receive that. Akbar even encouraged and funded Hajj pilgrimage to Makkah and appointed for the purpose a separate Mir-e-Hajj. Even he financed the construction of a khanqah for the stay of Hajj pilgrimage in Hejaz. In 1575, Gulbadan Banu Begum was a daughter of Babur, accompanied by several other royal ladies of the harem, were permitted to proceed on Hajj. Akbar's attitude towards religion and religious communities is generally looked by scholars into a number of phases on the basis of the decrees he passed and steps taken by him from time to time. Professor K. A. Nizami sees the transition in Akbar's religious ideas from hereditary faith to orthodox rigidity, followed by inquiry, skepticism, leading to synthesis and universalism, secularism, and finally converging into religious leadership. Akbar's attitude towards religion and religious communities is generally evaluated on the basis of the measures which he took following 1560-65, in which primarily affected the non-Muslim population of the empire. In its early phase, Akbar began with an extremely liberal attitude towards the non-Muslims. It is suggested that his upbringing and various intellectual influences molded his personal beliefs. Akbar's tutor, Bahram Khan and Mir Abdul Latif, they were Irani Shia, and the Munim Khan, who was a Sunni Turani, were above sectarian prejudices. Iqtidar Alam Khan, in his book on Akbar's India, also attributes the influence of Mongol Yesai Changezi, which in spirit instructed the rulers to consider all sects as one and not to distinguish them from one another. He even sees the persecution of Madhavis and Shias as the declining Mongol influence in 1560s. During this period, the emperor established matrimonial relations with the Rajputs. Akbar married Bihari Mal's daughter, prohibited enslavement of the prisoners of war in 1562, abolished the pilgrimage test 1563, and abolished jizya in 1564. These measures seem to have given Akbar the image of a secular emperor. In his personal beliefs, however, Akbar was a devout Muslim. Akbar's liberalism has been explained in several ways. The current opinion, however, favors the view that these measures were political concessions. In the absence of any reliable Muslim support, Akbar had little alternative but to seek alliance with the Rajputs and Indian Muslims. These measures were in fact concessions given to the non-Muslim to win their support. From the very beginning, Akbar had a inclination towards the Sufis. As early as 1562, Akbar established contact with Ajmer. He paid several visits to Sheikh Moinuddin Chishti's Dargah at Ajmer, one immediately after his victory at Chittor in 1568, another after the birth of Salim, his prince and his only heir and successor. He said the affairs of the Dargah and state funds were provided for its upkeep. During his Gujarat campaign, he even made shouts Ya Moin, seeking Khwaja Moinuddin's blessings. Even some of his soldiers during the campaign shouted Ajmeri, Ajmeri in the battlefield. In 1569, even he selected the site of Sheikh Salim Chishti's abode to be the site of his new capital town, Fatehpur Sikri, as a token of gratitude to the saint with whose blessings Akbar was blessed with the son Salim, Prince Salim. He also paid visits at the Dargah of Baba Farid Ganj Shakkar at Ajudhan in 1571 and that of Fariduddin Yahya Maneri in 1574. He also visited Sheikh Nizamuddin Aulia's Dargah in 1564 and even paid respect to Sayyid Salar Masood Ghazi's Dargah at Bahraich in UP and those of Sheikh Nizamuddin of Narnaul in Haryana and Sheikh Muhammad Ghaus of Gwalior. A change, however, appears in his attitude after 1565. This phase is marked by Akbar's attempt to win over the ulema class, that is, the religious class. The works like Gulzar-e-Abrar and Nafaisul Masir suggest that emperor showed deep respect to the ulema and bestowed upon this group abundant favors. There was a marked retrogression in his attitude in matters pertaining to religion. Akbar appointed grandson of Sheikh Abdul Quddus Gangohi as Sadr-u-Sudur, the chief ecclesiastical head, and Akbar himself used to visit Abdul Nabi's house, his famous chief of the head of the ecclesiastical affair, to listen to lectures in Hadith, the tradition of the Prophet. A document signed by his Wakil Munim Khan in 1566 refers to the order regarding the collection of jizya in the vicinity of Agra. Probably Akbar had repealed the imposition of jizya. In 1568, Akbar issued the famous Fathnama of Chittor, preserved in the Munshiat-e-Namkeen, which is full of terms and idioms that can be compared with any other prejudiced and bigoted declaration. It was couched in religious terminology as it declares his war against the Rajputs, that is, the Hindu rulers of Rajasthan, as jihad, taking pride in destroying temples and in killing the kafirs, the non-believers. Then we have Sharaiful Usmani, which tells that the emperor ordered Qazi Abdul Samid of Bilgram to check the Hindus from practicing idol worship there. To crown all this, in 1575, according to Badani, Akbar reimposed jizya, though it did not work. Encouraged by emperor's bounty, some of the ulema persecuted even the non-Sunni sects of the Muslims. The suppressive measures taken against the Mahdavis and the Shias, who were unpopular among the orthodox ulama, pass almost unnoticed in the chronicles of this period. 1567, Akbar also ordered at the instance of Sheikh Abdul Nabi exhumation of the remains of renowned Shia scholar Mir Murtaza Sharif Shirazi from the vicinity of Amir Khusro's tomb in Delhi on the pretext that a heretic may not be buried so close to the renowned Sunni saint Hazrat Nizamuddin Aulia. In 1569, Mirza Mukim of Isfahan and Mirza Yaqub of Kashmir were ordered to put to death at the recommendation of Abdul Nabi and other ulama on account of Shia-Sunni hostilities. Akbar dealt with the Mahdavis more seriously and suppressed them during his Gujarat campaign, 1572-73. The Mahdavi saint Mian Mustafa Bandagi was not only ordered, but in humiliating circumstances brought to the court in chains. In 1575, however, Akbar established Ibadat Khana with the aim to have free discussions on various aspects of Islamic theology. Every Friday discussions were held, and after the Friday prayers and continued till late in the night. But soon the emperor got disillusioned and gradually got estranged the way Muslim jurists used to quarrel over questions of jurisprudence. Akbar commented on ulama's behavior in utter dismay during the Ibadat Khana proceeds. I wish I had not heard such differences of opinion from the teachers of traditional subjects, nor were confounded by different interpretations of the Quranic verses and the traditions of Prophet. Gradually, even Abdul Nabi's behavior became intolerable and overbearing to Akbar, not only in matters of unrestrained powers enjoyed by in governing the office of the Sadr, that is the religious head, and in matters of the distribution of land grants, the religious land grants. One sheikh not only objected to Akbar wearing bright color, which is the saffron color, and which is associated with the Hindus, but he also attempted physical assault by throwing a rod towards him in anger. This spark provided over Abdul Nabi's order of execution of a Brahmin at Mathura on the charge of blasphemy. These ulama even amused huge wealth. Abdullah Sultanpuri, who was Sheikhul Islam, had collected huge wealth, which Akbar later confiscated to state treasury after his death. Gradually, Akbar started developing a rebellious attitude towards these conservative ulama who were rigid in outlook, self-centered and arrogant, and even indulged in petty wranglings. On the issue, ulama on one side and the ladies of the harem and Hindu nobles got divided. Akbar too felt the severity of punishment and realized the country cannot be ruled on such rigid lines. Not only he got disgusted with the attitude of these ulama, but also developed distrust over their traditional wisdom. In the beginning, only the Sunnis were permitted to take part in the Ibadat Khana discussion. Ibadat Khana was an open house worship chamber. From September 1578, the emperor opened the gates of this Ibadat Khana, literally the worship place, to all religious communities, including the Sufis, Shias, Brahmins, Jains, Christians, Jews, Parsis, etc. Now, this inspired Akbar decreed for complete freedom of religious freedom worship and to build a church or an idol temple or a fire temple. Thus, compulsion in religious matters were forbidden. The discussions at Ibadat Khana proved to be a turning point as they convinced Akbar that the essence of faith lay in internal conviction based on reason or aql. The chief motivator of Akbar's ideas on rationalism and reason was Fatahullah Shirazi. It was he who introduced Akbar to Iranian rationalist thinkers like Muhakkik Dawani, Mir Sadruddin, Mir Ghiyasuddin Mansur, and Mirza Jan. This was the period when Akbar came under the philosophical influence of Sheikh Mubarak and his son Abul Fazl and Faizi, and the other rationalist thinkers like Ghazi Khan Badakhshi, Hakim Abdul Fath, and got introduced by the philosophy of Wahdatul Wujud of Ibn al-Arabi, which was a philosophy of pantheism and unity of being. In 1579, proclamation of Mahzar, that is the decree of infallibility as V.S. Smith calls it, it was the culmination of the breakaway, total breakaway from the ulama. Mahzar was carefully drafted by Sheikh Mubarak and Abdul Nabi. Maulana Abdullah Sultanpuri was forced to sign the decree along with 4 other leading ulama of the time. Now later, Abdul Nabi and Maulana Abdullah Sultanpuri were asked to proceed on Hajj. The chief clauses of the Mahzar proclaimed were that Akbar was the Caliph of the age, that the rank of Caliph or the Khalifa is higher than that of the Mujtahid, the one who can interpret Quran. Akbar can select any of the opinion from Hadith. Akbar himself may issue decrees which do not go against the Nas. Akbar made an attempt by proclaiming himself the Mujtahid, the interpreter of law, and declaring himself as Imam-e-Adil, to claim the right to interpret all legal questions on which there existed a difference of opinion among the ulama. Sultan-e-Adil was placed above the Mujtahids, and through Mahzar, Akbar attempted to usurp the spiritual leadership. Akbar assumed the title of Amirul Mu'mineen, and in the khutbah read in Akbar's name addressed Akbar as Khalifa, thus suggestive of Akbar's desire to dislocate caliphate powers from the Ottomans to the Mughals. F.W. Buckler says that Akbar attempted to fix his position in the Muslim world, eliminating the importance of the king of Persia without acknowledging his allegiance to the Ottoman Caliph. M. Ray Chaudhry also echoes the same voice when he acknowledges that Imam-e-Adil, that is Akbar, placed himself above the Mujtahids of Persia. R.P. Tripathi also puts forth the similar opinion that Mahzar was a challenge to pretensions of the Sultan of Rum, that is Ottoman. Van Noer calls the declaration of Mahzar as the funeral oration of the ulama, and Sheikh Tajul Arifin declared him as Insan-e Kamil, while Faizi called him Khudai Majazi. Nurul Hasan argues that this document placed the sovereign above the machinations of the ulama class. He accuses ulama being highly vulnerable and easily influenced by the rich and the powerful nobles. This led to the violent protest from the section of the Mughal society. The most powerful reaction of the Akbar's religious attitude came from Sheikh Ahmad Sarhandi, a Naqshbandi saint from Sarhind. Sheikh Ahmad Sarhandi blamed the Muslims of this time by saying that they estranged themselves from the traditional religious values, instead sunk in bidat, that is the deviation from the tradition of the Prophet. He questioned ijtihad, the fresh interpretations, and called it hearsay in the garb of ijtihad. He criticized Akbar's religious experiments and he said these were misguided and based on erroneous concepts. The sharpest reactions came from the ulama. In 1579, Akbar finally repealed jizya. Repealing of jizya marked the intent of Akbar to eliminate all distinctions between his Hindu and Muslim subjects. Sharia principles no longer be enforced on his Hindu subjects. This was the period when Akbar interacted and came under the influence of various cultural and religious traditions, particularly Hindu scholars, Jains, and the Jesuit fathers. Orthodox scholars even blamed him being estranged from the principles of Shariat and favoring Shias and Hindus. Akbar interacted with a number of scholars expert in the Indian philosophical traditions, Madhu Saraswati, Madhusudan, Damodar Bhatt, Devi, and Purushottam, and who instructed him in the traditional Hindu legendary text in forms Badayuni, who wrote Muntakabut Tawarikh, and he was contemporary of Akbar. In 1576-77, Akbar invited Vittaleshwar from Mathura and granted Gokul to him. Even in 1593, Akbar issued a farman forbidding killing and hunting of peacocks in the Parganas of Mathura, Mangota, and others. Akbar frequently interacted and had discussions with the yogis and even established a separate locality, Jogipura, just outside Fatehpur Sikri, which was his capital in Agra. Even he personally visited the shrine of Balanath in Rohtas. Hindu festivals were regularly celebrated in the court. Even after the death of his mother, Hamida Bano Begum, Akbar shaved his moustaches and had a Hindu way of mourning. As a mark of respect, Akbar banned the killing of cows in his empire. Akbar even appointed Surdas Brahman to teach Indian philosophy to Prince Khurram. The opening of doors of Ibadat Khana for scholars of different sects and religions provided favorable background for further interactions for the Jains. In his quest for such, Akbar invited Jain scholar Hira Vijaya Suri, leader of the Jain Tapa Gocha branch, who reached Akbar's court at Agra in 1583 along with 67 Jain monks and stayed there till 1585. Akbar conferred on him the title Jagat Guru. Under Jain influence, Akbar banned the animal slaughter for 12 days during Jain Parushan festival. Akbar Fazl in his Aine Akbari mentions Hira Vijay Suri and his disciple Bhanu Chandra and Vijay Sen Suri as scholars par excellence. Jain scholar Bhanu Chandra wrote commentary explaining 1000 names of the sun. Jain scholar Shanti Chandra was the joint author of the said commentary and also wrote Sanskrit poem Kripa Kosha. Bhanu Chandra succeeded in getting concessions from Akbar to secure control over Mount Shatranjya, the revered Jain pilgrimage center. At Bhanu Chandra's request, Akbar even agreed to release the rebel prisoners of Saurashtra. Akbar even granted a piece of land in the proximity of Lahore fort for building a Jain temple there. In 1590 and 92, Akbar issued 2 farmans favoring Jains against the harassment of Jains in Kembe, and another farman favoring Shwetambar Tapa Gocha branch, confirming control over pilgrimage of Shwetambar Jains in the hands of Tapa Gacha. Akbar also invited the rival Kartar Gacha leader Jina Chandra Suri, who reached the Mughal court in Lahore in 1592, along with his 31 disciples, including Jaya Som and Kanak Som. Akbar even confirmed the title Yug Pradhan on Jinendra in Jina Chandra in 1593. As favor to Jina Vijaya, Akbar issued a Farman granting the protection to jail pilgrimage centers in Gujarat. Akbar even granted a Farman favoring Jina Vijaya ban of animal slaughter in the entire kingdom for a week in the month of Ashad, that is Nami to Purnima. Hira Vijay Suri's disciple Vijay Singh Suri visited Akbar's court at Lahore in 1593, and Akbar entrusted him the title of Kali Saraswati. Vijay Singh successfully countered Brahman allegations on Jain's disbelief in God. Vijay Singh's disciple Nanda Vijaya was also adorned with the title of Khushbaham. Vijay Suri even influenced Akbar to ban fishing in the Indus water for months in the year. Clearly, Akbar's encounter with the Jain leadership speaks high of Akbar's pluralistic approach towards religion and religious communities. Akbar invited even Jesuit fathers to participate in the Ibadat Khana, Father Montserrat and Father Akbar, and Francis Henriquez. They were there in the first mission and second mission under Edward Layton and Christopher de Vega, and the third mission headed by Father Jerome Xavier and Father Emmanuel Pinheiro and Brother Benedict de Gois. Akbar was impressed by seeing the simple living and unity of the thought of Jesuit fathers, in contrast with the greed of the ulama. He also showed great interest in the Christian precepts. Father Montserrat was made teacher of Murad. Father Montserrat even accompanied the king to Kashmir. A biography of Jesus, Miratul Quddus in Persian, was compiled during Akbar's period. Christians were granted permission to establish their churches and schools in Agra, Fatehpur Sikri, and Lahore. A Christian school in Lahore was attended by sons of the nobles and the other elites, including sons of the chief of Badakhsha. Akbar himself inaugurated the opening of church at Agra and reported to have performed prayer as per Christian tradition. Akbar even had in possession paintings of Christ and Virgin Mary presented to him by Jesuit fathers. Jesuits vehemently desired Akbar to be converted to Christianity. However, Akbar's interest in Christianity, though was deep but largely remained confined to his curiosity to know the precepts of faith and discover the truth. Akbar even interacted with the yogis, sannyasis, and kalandars. Even significant number of them joined the new faith. By 1580, Akbar adopted the policy of Sulh-e-Kul, absolute peace with all the religions, and he remained an ardent supporter of this. Now, under Akbar, the Mughal school of painting took to naturalism, and miniature paintings were also produced under the patronage of Emperor Akbar. Right? You can see some of the Mughal paintings. These are the miniature paintings, and these paintings were not very big. These were 1 inch, 1.5 inch to 2 and 2.5 inches. Right? Though Islam does not allow depiction of any living being, but according to Akbar's court historian Abul Fazl, the painting confirms your faith in God, as you can produce your copy, but we cannot put life in it. The royalty there was established in Agra, and a large number of miniature paintings depicting court scenes, hunting scenes, royal album of Timurid princes was produced. Akbari paintings also had Renaissance influence, as Christians brought with them the paintings as a gift to the emperor. Akbar also constructed a large number of palace fortresses, including Agra and Lahore Red Forts.